My name is Sean Thomas, and I'm the author of Be More Today, a 40-day guide to a better version of you. As doctor of physical therapy, I've seen thousands of people do great things. They came to me with ailments, physical ailments, pain, issues, and they got through them, all because they decided in their mind they were going to do it. And I guarantee you, if you just trust the process and be persistent, you too can be the best version of you. Have you ever been out and about, traveling, running, and you're trying to figure out how to hold everything on you? Phone, keys, wallet, lip gloss, lip balm, your gels. I gotta tell you, the best belt you can ever use is by one company, and that company's name is Spy Belt. Spy Belt makes an innovative running belt that solves the pocketless problem. Whatever small personal items, SPI, need to be toted during physical activity, you will hold it in your very discreet, expandable running belt with comfort and ease over any distance. And those are the words taken right from Kim Overton, CEO and founder and inventor of the Spy Belt product. Kim's a great friend of mine. She sponsors the Be More Today show, and we support all things that Kim does. So, if you're looking for the best belt on the market, visit spybelt.com today and check out all their amazing belts. I wear them for all my runs, and I think they are the best. If you go on today and use the code BeMoreToday, you can get 10% off any of their merchandise. So, check out spybelt.com, and let's continue to be more today with Spy Belt. Run smart, run free, run with Spy Belt. Don't let aches and pains hold you back from living your life. At Jack Physical Therapy, our experienced clinicians create a personalized treatment plan that fits each and every patient's needs uniquely. Whether it's recovering from an injury or enhancing your performance, we've got you covered. With over 150 locations throughout New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, there is sure to be a Jag Physical Therapy location near you. Visit jagpt.com and book an appointment today to get back the life you love. That's jagpt.com. jagpt.com.
Welcome to the Be More Today show. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our show today. Now, let's hear it from our host, Dr. Sean Thomas.
What's going on, folks? Your boy again, Dr. Sean Thomas, back in the building with the Be More Today show. We are back in the building, folks, and we are here still in the springtime, still in April, loving that the weather is finally changing. It's about time. It's necessary. We need it. And I feel more alive, like our quote for this year, being more alive in 25. I feel more alive today than ever before. And I'm thankful to be here with you for season 6 of the Be More Today show. As you already know, Be More Today is a movement. We've been doing this thing for the last 6 years. And Be More Today has done so many things, from our More Merch store to my first book to my second book, Project More, out right now on Amazon and on my BeMoreToday.com page. So go out there and check it out. Our Steps for Greatness Challenge continues. We have 172 people out there getting their steps in across the country, and it's been very, very competitive. Shout out to all those who are doing the Steps for Greatness Challenge. Keep putting those steps in. Again, every step counts. So keep stepping. And for more information about me, always email me at info@bemoresay.com. This show has done great things, now heard in 91 countries, over 72,000 downloads. Again, thanks to your love and support, this continues to be the show that continues to inspire you to be more today. So shout out to our sponsors, Spy Belt, Jack Physical Therapy, and our monthly patrons. We appreciate you always. We appreciate you so much. Our quote for today is simple as always. Life is a journey to find the people and places that bring out your best, by Ray Diffley. Now, folks, I don't always usually quote people who are going to be on the show, but I said to myself, I had to think about in my experience, in my life journey, I've met so many people who have touched my life in various ways, directly and indirectly. And Ray Diffley, for those who are about to experience right now, is a trendsetter. I went to a school called Chortworth Mary Hall for my high school years and my formative years. And I learned so much from so many people, both the students there and the teachers there. And Ray Diffley was one of those people who was there who inspired me to be more today. For those who don't know, Ray Diffley is the founder and director of the RD3 Education and Advising Center. RD3 is dedicated to serving students and families worldwide, developing students of strong character, prepared to make an impact and lead meaningful lives using their character strengths developed in part by their educational journey. As a 1991 Bowdoin College graduate, Ray has carved an impactful career in education and admissions, focusing on character development and assessment innovation. Before founding RD3, Ray held a distinguished 23-year tenure at my alma mater, Choate Rosemary Hall, forever true to gold and blue, with the majority of his time serving as the director of admission and financial aid. During his tenure, he received Choate's Johannes von Strahlen Award for distinguished teaching in 2016. His roles at Choate extended beyond admission, encompassing coaching ice hockey, which I remember very, very vividly, dorm advising at all levels, and active participation in various school life committees. Ray's commitment to education and assessment led him to complete his master's degree at Wesleyan University in 2004. We delved further into human assessment, including the Robert Stromberg theory of successful intelligence. His expertise gained national recognition, earning him the Enrollment Management Association's Brett Wall Award in 2014, and his involvement extended past leadership roles, including the chair of the Enrollment Management Association's think tank on the future of assessment and co-chair of the development of the character skills assessment. Folks, he's done so many things. And in addition to all these things, he continues to enjoy ice hockey and coach at various levels, from youth A to double A and to even D1 and D3 college and Olympic professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, pets included, buckle your seatbelts, please, for my next guest on the Be More Today show, my friend, and I can now call him a colleague because we do similar things for similar people, Ray Diffley. Coach Ray, what is going on?
Dr. Thomas, what a joy it is to see you and follow your career and your life, and to think I know you when you were a young teenager, just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. Remember the dance moves when you got to Choate? That's one thing that sticks out in my mind. Of course, your stardom on the track field was notable, but you always had a spark there, kid. You always had a spark, and I knew it was going somewhere. I didn't know where, but in the field of admission, we're trained to pick up on these things, and you were full of life. I don't know if that was the day you were born, but when you got to Choate, you were full of life, and no one was really going to dim that flame, to be honest with you. So thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I think of my, umpteen Facebook friends, I think half of them are Choate graduates. And, I'm conducting a longitudinal study of every 14-year-old I met to watch them go through their journey of life. It's a true joy and such a privilege. So thanks again for having me.
No problem, Coach. And I really appreciate you being on the show. I've been following you, since you've been on Facebook, clearly. And it's amazing to see, like you said, thinking back to my formative years being at Choate Rosemary Hall. And for those who I've talked about Choate a number of times on the show, I've had a number of other Choaties on the show as well, who've also gone on to do great things in their lives professionally and in other ways. And we all talk about the experience there. When you're 15 years old, going to a school and going away from home for the first time and being around people that you don't know, right? As roommates from all across the world, not even the country, all across the world, it's really eye-opening. And I got to say, you being there, as a leader there, as a coach there, I had a number of friends who were on the hockey team, clearly. So I came to many hockey games and watched and saw you in many ways, not just in admissions, but also as a coach, as a mentor, as a leader. And I just want to say it was a privilege, really, just to be able to see you doing great things for us. I think we took it for granted at the time because there were just so many people who were great, who were mentoring us and leading us in our formative years. But looking back on those moments now, I say I was really blessed and very, very grateful to be able to experience that Choate Rosemary Hall experience. And the same friends that I had then, my same good friends, Doug Chang, Parag Shaw, Matthew Lynn, I'm still friends with them to this day. We're very, very close. We see each other once a year, and we always reminisce on all the times that we shared at Choate and how much we grew as men during that time, during that tenure. So, kudos to you for all you've done, for bringing us in the admissions process, for one, but also just for continuing to help others like me to go through this process and to find their paths and to be inspired to help others also on the way. So we thank you.
it fits into the find your people and places that bring out your best, right? And I want to comment on something real quick, just because it's never more relevant than today in our political climate, our global world chaos, if you will. And that was when you got to Choate, Sean, there was a phrase that doesn't stand actually till today. I got to bring it back a little bit to Choate, but it was, we bring our students from bold ignorance to thoughtful uncertainty.
Mm,
And that is to suggest that we admit these really smart, eager, motivated kids who know a lot about a lot, but until they encounter the diversity of our world, they don't understand what they don't know.
right.
So they become thoughtfully uncertain instead of I'm right 100%, I'm not going to listen to you. Just
Mm,
this wonderful formula that I think our whole world could benefit from right now is just be a better listener, be open to different opinions, and watch how it makes you more thoughtful. So
yeah,
just
yeah, no, absolutely. And you know what I really appreciate about Cho? I learned so many things um about the world at Cho. I mean, yeah, we had our math classes and whatever science classes, etc. But I
yeah,
learned so much about race being a social construct. I learned so much about the differences that come from people who are literally born in different parts of the world. Having a roommate who was from Blytheville, Arkansas, a place I had never actually ever been to. What it was like for him growing up versus me, growing up and being born in New York City. There were so many different things that I had a chance to really experience that happened outside of the classroom. And
yeah,
I think places like Choate and other places that you've been honored really to help usher other students into matriculating to these educational institutions are amazing at really just making people think and
yeah,
allowing people to have that mentality to say, look, you know what? I know you may think certain things, but let's expand that a little bit. And I think you're right. There isn't really much room for that nowadays. So many things that are happening in terms of our young people, in terms of what's happening in the media. It's
yeah,
not really us thinking at all. It's just looking at things and processing whatever we see. We're not really, well, did that make sense? Does that actually add to what's happening? And I
right.
believe that places like Cho and Andover and wherever else, the conversation we had about just basic things. I miss those conversations sometimes.
Yeah,
And maybe that's why I
yeah,
do this podcast, right? Because I get
yeah,
a chance
yeah,
to really connect with people who are like-minded in that regard. But, when I look at the work that you're doing with RD3, it inspired me to bring you on because I want others to know that there are still people out there developing the thought process, developing other people to go out there and really process not just what they think, but also their character
yeah,
and putting those two things together to make this world a better place. You're doing that in so many ways. So,
yeah,
Coach, talk to us more about RD3. What
yeah.
inspired you to do it? How you got into it, and what you've been doing with this platform for the last
Yeah.
couple of
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. I like saying that. I'll tell you, I'm going to float one thing. Maybe we'll pick back up on it in a few minutes. But we all took chemistry in class in high school, whatever grade. But the more important class, and well, it is an important class to be honest. But the more equally important, if not more important, is human chemistry.
years.
So I was titled director of admission, but really what I really felt was I was director of community creation. I was creating a community by selecting interesting kids, bringing them together for the fireworks to happen. And that was unbelievably exciting. And I still think we are not even close to where we need to be with regard to human chemistry and big data. Because right now, an English class or an honors English or whatever the class is formed usually by either GPA or test scores or random. The computer spits it out. But I'm telling you, the next phase of great education is character chemistry, right? And this is the whole concept of, and I tell my students, time and time again, your circle is key, right? Who brings out your best and who brings out your worst? This is not a dating show, but there's some people who are bad for you, but you're attracted to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a danger in that, but there's sometimes an appeal and excitement. You need to know that about yourself. So let's let that bake on the back burner for a few minutes. Maybe we'll come back to that. But the RD3 is interesting. A great colleague of mine named Colin Lord, his nickname for me was RD3, Ray Diffley III. And that has nothing to do with the business until I started the business because when I branched off from Choate to do some work in admission leadership, and then I branched off from that, it was a bit of a bridge to what I'm doing now. I always had a passion for character development, human assessment, human potential. We had this partnership with Yale Child Study Center and some of the top researchers on psychology, human abilities, and competencies. It was a passion of mine. It's been for 32 years, honestly. I was kind of like the water boy at Choate when Choate decided to do this research project on human development potential, how to pick better in the admission process.
Hmm.
Over 32 years, somewhere in the middle, I became a little bit expert, at least an amateur expert in this space, because I was the practitioner. I was applying it every single day to my work in admission and studying the results. And my little joke about Facebook, I'm still studying the results. I'm watching everybody become sort of who they are. But the humor in starting a business, and you know a little bit about this yourself, I'm sure, is that I thought of every name for my company, my education center in the book.
Hmm.
Every time I had something bright and fluffy, and someone had already taken it. It was
Hmm.
already accounted for in the trademark or copyright, whatever world.
Hmm.
Um, and then suddenly, I don't know if it was Colin, my friend, bringing it back to me, or me just saying, I could call it, Diffley educational consulting or something, or advising or student development. And then I thought, let me think about this deeper. And suddenly I came up with, I thought of RD3, and then and it fit perfectly. So, the R is relevant research. I'm lucky, I'm sure there's someone else, but I find I'm most dug into scientific research on human development, student development assessment. So I'm on top of the research, which makes me confident to give advice, right? So relevant research. The D is really my favorite, and D stands for development by design. That is, we also should be the architects and designers of our lives. Way too many people just let life happen to them.
Hmm.
Sometimes it works out, all good, right? But no way. You got to be the designer of your life. As soon as you get to an age where you can be, and I call this fourth stage of cognitive development, anywhere from 10 to 14-ish, depending on your maturity, where you can start to take the baton from your parents, anybody who cares about you, to plan your life. So that's the D, development design. The three, and I am Ray Diffley the third. So kudos to my dad and my granddad.
Hmm.
But the three is this Venn diagram that I don't know if this will be a video or just an audio, but
Yeah.
pointing behind me to a Venn diagram, which I wrote on the classic story. I wrote on a napkin on a trip back from Hong Kong when I thought, how am I going to pick 5 kids out of the 300 I just met?
Mm.
Right? And what is the model for human development? And in the middle of it, really, and colleges would agree with this, I think, wholeheartedly, is self-awareness. Who are we? Really, how can you start your life until you know a little bit about who you are? Now, are you going to be fully understood of who you are at age 12? No way, right? But you have to start somewhere. So the three is this Venn diagram with, if you can't see the flower petals, it's in the middle is who you are. Um, Top petal is growth and development. Second is success and achievement. Third is wellness and balance. And so, success and achievement is to say that you should have some successes, but, if I was a coach and I wanted to have the perfect season, it might be, the record is, 20, 10, and 2, right? You're not winning all the time. You're not losing all the time. You're having a balance of it. Wellness and balance, I will say, there are times you go all out. There is no balance. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but there are moments, there are phases, if you're up for it, there's no balance at all,
Mhm.
and I was just listening to it. And believe me, I don't necessarily subscribe to David Goggins, but every time he comes up on my feed, I'm like, all right, let me listen to this guy. And Michael Jordan's trainers, kind of famous people, like, yeah, there's a time for imbalance in your life. You
Yeah.
can't go at it until you burn out, obviously. But
Yeah.
that's kind of how RD3 came to be. It was really my love in the admission work. Listen, admission is not fair. Okay, everybody knows
Mm.
that. We try like heck to make it fair. It's not fair. And for so many years, I watched kids and families make mistakes. And I thought, geez, it's not my job to teach them how to go about this process. It's not my job to teach them how to grow up. I'm just going to evaluate them. And I knew I was missing great kids.
Mm.
Others, you could take some risks on. You saw the potential and you could kind of go for it, but only if you're in charge, right? If you're
Right.
just a voting committee member, the boss outvotes. So I felt like I had to be on top of my game with assessment. Now, I say that, Sean, knowing that even the best measures of predicting of outcomes are limited.
Hmm.
severely limited. So much is left to other variables. And that's what I love to sort of study. So, well, how did that work out? How did that work out for you? And why did it work out for someone, but not for someone else?
Hmm.
So many times it came back to some of these core character traits that were part of it. So I just felt like I had done the admission thing for 23 years. I worked for this group called ASAP, which is a fantastic professional development group for admission people. And don't get me wrong, I love my colleagues and my peers, but adults aren't as interested in learning necessarily as kids.
Hmm.
I don't know if you found that.
Absolutely.
No offense to my adult friends, but kids are sponges if you get work with the right kids, and it's just such a joy. So my goal is to share everything I learned, right? And RD3 was a way to do something practical, which is to help kids apply to school, find the right educational pathway. And I'm not heck bent on boarding school, private school, online school, academy school. Any pathway could be possibly good.
Yeah.
So that's how it came to be. I'm now the LLC formed in 2019, but I've been kind of playing with it for a couple of years before that. And now I do serve students all around the world. Really, word of mouth is how they come to me. I work with them on a 12-month cycle because I believe, nothing good happens overnight, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, so that's kind of how RD3 came to be. And I do have partnerships in other countries, particularly China. Learned a whole lot about that and traveled many times to China, as you probably know, Mexico as well. But because of my experience with Choate, we'd always have students from 50 countries applying. And so I did get to know just about every system and
Hmm.
school and curriculum and culture to some degree, and been an absolute joy. So here I sit, learning how to be a great business person, while my main passion is student development and education.
Yeah. Ray, that's amazing. You mentioned how to pick 5 people out of 300. That's just by itself thinking about it. I can't fathom. I remember I got my first job out of college. After I came back from Brown, I worked at Mount Sinai Hospital for 4 years, and I didn't expect to be there for 4 years. I worked there for 4 years, and it was in an HIV education and treatment program called Project Impact with Mount Sinai. It was a great program for adolescents,
Mm.
kids who had parents who were infected. They were the family members of them, or the children of them, and they may have had HIV or did not. But we took them to their doctor's appointments and whatever else. And I remember my boss at the time, my first real boss, Kelly Saloni, hired me, and she hired a program assistant.
Mm.
And she said she had, I don't know, 500 resumes, right? Whatever the resumes were.
Yeah.
And she told us after she hired me and my colleague, Eileen, she said, look, I had so many resumes, I didn't know what to do. And I
Mhm.
literally hired you both because you went to Brown and she went to Harvard. And that's why you guys got the job.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
was like, what? Part of me was like, okay, that's cool. But also I was like, wait a minute. Like, what
Yeah.
what is the process that we're actually using to, assess if someone is ready for this job or not? Yeah, how do you sift through all the recommendations, all the applications you have? What are
Yeah.
you really looking for? And even to your point, you're talking about character. How can
Mm.
you really assess anyone's character based on what it says on paper? So, my question to you, Ed, you've done a lot of research in terms of character development and looking at all these different platforms, and you've been in missions for so many years. Even looking at me when you said, oh, I saw something in you. How are you able to look at all these applications? What are you looking at? What are you looking for? And why is character so important to you? How do you sift through it to see someone's character through the paper?
Yeah, man, that's I think we need a 7-day retreat to answer all those questions, John. But oh God, where do I start? Well, first of all, back to my point of admission not being necessarily fair. You come in with all your biases, right? So it's so funny. I love my life at Choate and I love working in admission. And then it's funny, someone would come along and wanted a job in my office.
Mm,
And sometimes they were friends or colleagues of mine. And the first thing I would say to them was like, you're a little bit too much like me. We've got me covered, so I'm not
mm,
gonna hire you, right? So you have to have someone on your committee who understands as many, if not everybody, coming into that applicant pool, because context is everything. In fact, when I left Choate, you get a laugh out of this. I wish I had the picture to show you, but Straight Outta Compton was a movie coming on the scene
hmm
at the
hmm
time. So put it this way, my team bought T-shirts that said straight out of context.
Oh.
Because human evaluators will, based on their bias, pick something to promote a candidate or
Yeah.
decline a candidate.
Yeah.
And it is very dangerous practice. And that's why you read a teacher recommendation, if the teacher, the beginning of the teacher's thought is kind of soft or not very helpful,
Mm.
and you pull that out of context and put it on the review cap, that kid is toast. They're not getting in, right? But if you keep reading the recommendation, it says, but Sean came around, has become the best class member I could ever, it's so people would sometimes present information. They were supposed to be trained not to do that, but I would argue that humans are pretty flawed. The process can be pretty flawed. But at the end of the day, your character is the evidence you leave behind.
Mm.
So you can, and even the work I do, and the fun part with this D, the development by design, when I talk to a student about who do you want to be, who are you,
Mhm.
what's the path, etc. As soon as they define themselves as a starting point, right? It'll evolve from there almost daily. But I'll go back and I'll say, okay, let's go find the evidence of that person you just described. And sometimes it's everywhere for everyone to see, but other times it's not. And so that's why, to some degree, the teacher recommended the corroborative evidence, right? It's sort of like when someone has an interview and they don't do well.
Mhm.
That's probably the end of the story here. But then you read the teacher recommendations and peripheral evidence, and it supports that candidate. You can think about looking past that evidence right there. But I think I took a few notes when I was looking at your website, and I thought about this conversation today. And one of the sound bites I heard the other day um, was bad people or character flaws, they will eventually catch up to you.
Mm.
Obviously, we've got some very successful flawed people in our world, be it
Mm.
business people, politicians, athletes, you name it. And they may win for a period of time, but in the end, by and large, they're gonna lose.
Mm.
And when you're admitting people to your school, you're admitting them for a lifetime association. Dr. Sean Thomas will always be associated with Choate. And so you start to look at evidence that, is the foundation. That's why it's one of the great things actually about boarding school is the parent statement.
Mm.
There's a series of questions that go to the foundation of how this child was built, right? And I tell you, if I could write a book, I can't because all the information I collected was confidential. But that parent statement, the first question, which was developed in I think 1993 at Choate with a woman on my team at the time, and I think me, I have to figure out who gets credit for it. But the question was, what values have you instilled in your child
Mm.
that we might experience at our school? You probably wish you could get yours to see what your
I'd love
mom,
to see it.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
These were, so I started at Choate when I was 23 years old, John.
Wow.
When I was 46, I spent half my life there. So for 23 years, collecting thousands and thousands of those documents, what values have you instilled in your child? How might we experience them? My gosh, I mean, the parenting book would fly off the shelves. And there's a little humor here too, because I did have families applying at times, and sometimes they were people I knew from the community.
Mm.
And the humor was when they read that question, they said, "Holy mackerel!" I called an immediate family meeting and asked my children, what have your mother and I taught you?
Yeah.
Anything? Please give us some feedback.
Yeah.
And here's the whole concept of intentionality. They may have been wonderful role models and taught them everything their kids needed to know, but there's such power in words
Mhm.
and pauses and eye contact and saying, Sean, this is how our household rolls.
Mm.
Okay. You want free meals and a roof over your head. These are the things you do. And even better, I've seen families that have, the motto, the credo, the we live by this in this house. I love that stuff. Call it cliche. It's amazing. And if I saw some of that evidence from the family as a starting point, and then to the student who could express some of that, I asked them questions and simple interview questions, what does your family value? What do you value? I have a series of rubrics. I don't know if we'll have time to kind of dig into them at all, but it's a little bit sort of the finding your why. I've developed a rubric for personal development, and it all stems from these sort of questions of kids who know themselves, families who have some guidance. And I'll tell you, I was I said this on social media posts the other day, and I got some Choate students to kind of weigh in a little bit. And what I said was, I'm married, my wife's a teacher, we have sort of a stable household, so to speak. We kind of got it easy on that front. But I tell you, nothing is impossible because the number of single parents who
Mm.
are just killing it somehow with raising their kids and
Yeah.
bringing them to the admission office. Even before I had kids, when I was 25 years old, I'm thinking, wow, this parent is amazing. This kid is amazing. How did they make it through all these challenges, etc.?
Hmm.
So it can be done, but it doesn't just happen. It's intentional, right? And
Mm.
I think that's a lot of what you do is intentionality. It's have a game plan. If you ask my kids what's my favorite phrase, it's, those who fail to plan to fail, right?
Yep,
It's,
absolutely.
I tell you, I could live my own life by that every day. Just that one motto alone would raise me up.
Yeah.
So I think unfortunately in school sometimes I always do say I confess talent wins, right? So kids will get admitted on talents, but good coaches, good admission offices, good companies, they're looking very quickly after the talent to the character.
Mm.
They should look at their first, of course, but talent does attract attention. And I will say, I did this interesting because I did all this research and studies for some period of time. The board of trustees at Show took note and paid attention, and I ended up getting um, three walks of life on the board of trustees at Show to give me their own anecdotal evidence of who they pick and
Mm.
why.
Mm.
And one was a Broadway producer, one was a big guy at Goldman Sachs, and one owns a lot of golf courses and a lot of plumbing supplies. And I said, you're in a situation like I am. You're a great company. You have great access to Harvard and Brown graduates all the time. And so, what separates those people
Right.
at the end of the day? And universally, their answer was, do we want to be stuck in a bunker with them? Do we want to hang? Do we
Mm.
want to have a meal with them? Do we want? Are they relatable? Are they good people? Do we want to spend time essentially?
Mm.
That usually comes from people of good character.
Yeah.
And so again, I've done a lot of colleges. I was on this board to raise the level of character and admission. It's hard to judge and rate it. So it does take someone who can check their biases at the door, understand kids, understand human development, understand BS.
Hmm. Hmm.
Someone can interview really well. You meet them the second time,
Yep.
you're like, dang, uh, fool me once, right?
Right.
So yeah, again, and there's I don't know what tools you use, if any, but I'll stop here because I could go on and I'll let you guide the rest of the conversation. But on this character topic, but I use VIA, Values in Action by character.org.
Mm.
It's like, you know, everybody sort of knows the 16 personalities, Myers-Briggs, Clifton Strengths.
Right. Right.
There's a lot of things out there, and they all do similar things, but it's a good starting point. So all my students take that as a start. It's free online. Anybody can create an account, give your email. That's what they want to do a little
Mm.
research on you, and it's a starting point for a much longer conversation. And again, that work to me starts character, identification. It can be brought up by parents, obviously, but in terms of the student taking the baton, understanding that sort of starts as young as 10. But my youngest client student right now is 10, and he's cute as heck and he's great. But it's got to take him a little while. So 12 is even 13, 14. That's about the range. So
Gotcha.
when kids are interviewing for high school, I can do some work. And if they're slightly mature, it doesn't have to be, the most mature, but mature enough to care, to want to get better, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, get to meet someone where they are and take them where they need to go. But obviously our world, the higher the power, the more the money, the more the temptations, the more flaws, the more opportunities to bend and break and not be a person of good character. And we see that all over the news all the time.
Yeah.
We need to raise more people who can, I'm full of cliches. So,
Hmm.
if you don't stand for something, you'll
Hmm.
fall for anything.
Exactly.
They're cliches for a reason. They're pretty good. In
Yep.
my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What would you fight for? What would you die for? What would you defend for? All these are just, And if you're a kid like you're when I met you,
Yeah.
if you have just some of those answers, I like you. I'm going with you. I'm pushing you forward. If you don't, here's the tragedy, the sad part. If you don't, it doesn't mean you couldn't have them by tomorrow.
Right.
No one's ever led you to find them and discover them. And that's what I do. And I'm sure that's what you do. And, I say greatness is inside all of us.
Mm,
Just a matter of mining it
yeah.
and bringing it out and empowering that person. And, someone who would be a flat interviewee today, in literally like a week, they can at least show signs of having a plan, having some confidence, knowing who they are, etc. And that can be enough spark, to catch the attention of an employer, an admission committee, a friend, right? This is
Yeah.
just about school and work. It's about making friendships, it's about
Yeah.
being a person of value. You know, my favorite question, Sean, is and this really stumps kids a lot of the times, and it stumps a lot of adults too. And it's a very simple thing, but here's the question: how does the room change when you walk into it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How does the room change when you walk into it? And that can be a room of strangers or it can be a room of peers, right? And so I'll ask the students, I say, when you go to your history class and you're the last one and you're not late, but you're
Mm-hmm.
the last one in, and there's 15 or 20 kids turn their heads to you and look at Sean Thomas, what is the caption bubble above their head?
Yeah.
Oh man, this kid's here. He's such a pain. The teachers say, thank God, Sean's here. He always moves the class forward. If no one notices or no one cares, we got some work to do.
Right.
Right. And no one's going to admit someone who has no impact on their peers or community.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Completely agree
makes
with that.
makes
Yep.
it very tough for the introvert, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My wife will probably disagree with me, but I always have said that I present as an extrovert, but I really am like an extrovert introvert. I'm
Yeah,
someone
introvert
who,
right there.
I like being out there, but I also like being by myself sometimes. And
Yeah.
might not always say everything, but there is something that happens when I do walk into a room. I believe. Um,
Yeah.
and I've had people on the show talk about thermostats and thermometers. I've actually wrote
Oh
those
yeah.
for my book. Are you a thermostat? Are you a thermometer?
Oh yeah.
How you affect the room when you walk in. Are you raising the temperature? Are you affected by those who are around you? And
Totally.
it's so true, right? It goes for young people and also goes for older adults as well. These principles you're talking about
Yeah.
are life skills or life traits. And I think you're doing great in terms of embedding that into young people. And I see so many older people
Mm.
who struggle with these things, who, they had benefited from your teachings when they were younger. They
Yeah.
might be in a different place in their career, in their situations in life. Now, if they had some kind of embedment of this into their lives when they were younger.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
all speaks true, Ray. I think it's all great things. And you mentioned greatness, which clearly from my website, I have greatness all over the place. I have a Steps of Greatness challenge. I talk about Steps of Greatness in my books.
Yeah.
I think we all can be great.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I was around so many great people at Choate,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
including students and staff who, I mean, literally the energy at all the institutions that I was a part of, from
Yeah.
Choate to Brown and otherwise, we're all just, yo, if we don't see something we like, let's change it. Okay, cool. We want to do something. Let's think about it. Let's get this thing done. No one was lazy. No, and even if you were lazy, banking on, like you said, your talent, there was
Yeah.
still a baseline level of, well, my talent's enough to get me here. So everyone was kind of driving forward to some
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah.
I know you and I had mentioned the name Don Yeager. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what you've learned? I mean, I haven't read any of his books, but I know he talks about the greatness mentality also.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get some of your thoughts on his work as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So Don Yeager, it's interesting because, you know, we make a lot of presumptions in our worlds, in our lives, right? And one of them is that everybody thinks like me. They want to be great. They want to maximize their potential. They want to be more, right?
Right.
How could you not want that, right?
Right.
But the reality is some people, and I have a friend who's the mania of getting better and greatness and achievement, obviously causing some mental health problems in our world. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone is built to be of that mindset. And so I think if it starts with, even the family, what do they want for their child? Then the child, of course, is an extension of that family. What do they want for themselves? Everything in moderation. My parents are Catholic. They would say, like, well, the philosophy of life is everything in moderation. Be a good person. Very
Mm-hmm.
simple and plain. So they actually get a kick out of my striving for excellence. But my mindset is, put on this earth to grow and learn and develop, maximize our potential, have an impact, and then back into the earth when we're
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Don't waste it. Who's the famous actress who said all the greatest dreams are found in one place, and that's the graveyard. People
Mm.
that didn't find and pursue what they wanted to pursue. It's very
Yeah.
quite a sad statement, but it's very true. So Don Yeager was introduced to me through my work after Choate. I worked at this place called ASAP, the Association for Independent School Admission Professionals. I was a director of a leadership center for admission people, trying to get them as professional and trained up as possible. And Don Yeager has done is a New York Times bestselling author. Actually, I recommend to any of your listeners and to you as well if you haven't already picked up on it. He does a daily dose of greatness,
Mm.
takes quotations from the world and every day spits them out. I've subscribed for probably 10 years. In fact, if I turn my camera around all the way to my cork board beside
Oh
the window,
yeah.
that is filled with quotes. Many came over the last 32 years from Don Yeager. It actually started at Choate. I clipped out, I had one of those calendars with little quotations on it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I clipped out the JFK quote, which is our progress as a nation can only be as swift as our progress in education. Right. And that means the bottom up, not just a private school, boarding school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was one quote. It turned into about 50 now.
Mm.
One of the exercises I do with my students is I have them walk in. I take this on the road with me when I do student development retreats. And I'll just have them, and I do this with my own three children. I'll have them stare at the wall and tell me the top three quotes that resonate with you.
Yeah.
And instantly that tells me a ton about them.
Mm.
Just simple little exercise because they don't know all these quotes. They're 14 years old, whatever,
Yeah.
as old as 18. But very few kids I would meet would have that in them. So, Don Yeager studied greatness through, Walter Payton and a lot of athletes, a lot of famous athletes. And so he's written a bunch of books on it. He'll say and some of it's very sporty and a little bit cliche on that front. So that, if I showed it to my wife, who's a musician and a teacher, she wouldn't necessarily get pumped up.
Right.
You have to hate losing more than you like winning,
Mm-hmm.
mentors. There's if you Google Don Yeager 16 greatness to 16 factors of greatness, you get the whole list. But people need to be inspired,
Mm.
right? And I think some faculties now have like walk-up songs for people about to give announcements at school. Isn't that kind of cool?
Oh,
Like
that's kind
like
of
they
cool.
and I always said actually myself, imagine if you were in math class and you got the right answer and I'm a hockey nut. So imagine you got the right answer in math class and a horn goes off, a goal horn goes
Yeah.
off,
Yeah.
and they pipe in the crowd noise. It'd be just as cool to get the right answer in science or math class that it would be in that part. So Don Yeager to me is someone like my other mentors, and again, part of my rubric for greatness, you got to have mentors. When I ask a 12 or 13-year-old, who do you look up to outside of your family? Because that's an
Mm-hmm.
easy, and they don't have an answer for me, that's a problem.
Mm.
That's a problem. It's a problem that can be solved in minutes, if not hours or a day.
Yeah.
But they're not charting 4 or 5 people whose life they may or may not want to follow. They'll find out when they dig in more. That's a problem.
Right.
So for me, Don Yeager is someone, John Maxwell, leadership, writer, guru. Sir Ken Robinson is, top TED Talk of all time. I had dinner with him at Choate, lucky enough, before he passed away just a couple of years ago. One of his quotes is on my website. I think you have to have people you look up to. So when I saw your greatness thing, I thought, oh my gosh, you got to, and you know what I love being, John? A connector,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there was these times at Choate as admission director, I would come upon a student I knew was awesome and a great kid, and another student I also knew to be awesome, great kid, and I would assume they knew each other,
Mm.
and they didn't. And that's so Choate's a bigger school. Sometimes you can see someone, but you don't really know them. You never
Right.
met them officially for it. But man, did I love to put those people together.
Yeah.
And even I'm sure you do this, and I love putting people together.
Yeah.
It's just this human chemistry piece.
Yeah.
And once they start to build that, again, if I'm meeting a 14-year-old kid, I'm interviewing them, and I say, oh, tell me who you look up to, who do you follow? And it could be like lighthearted, like who do you follow on social media? And they, oh, K-pop or something. They get like like, I'm not sure this is an intellectual answer, Mr. Diffley, but I love K-pop. I'm like, that's cool. You got to start somewhere. What do you
Right.
like about it? Why do you like it? How does it inspire you? How does it motivate you? Right. So you got to have answers to that question. But I think it starts with, it starts with finding your why.
Mm.
So I've got all kinds of rubrics and series of questions that I ask my students. Do you want to be great? Any interest? Any
Mm.
interest in maximizing your potential? Do you want to be average? Sometimes you got to reach for greatness just to be average.
Mm.
Reaching for average, you're in the gutter.
Yeah.
So it's a competitive world out there. The Don Yeager to me is someone, again, if you're not networking, if you're not having these conversations we're having today, you're not getting these answers,
Yeah.
right? And again, I every day almost I ask the internet, what's the latest in character research?
Mm.
I want to know every book, every article, every person, everyone that's ever done something about this. And I still, that's my part of my relevant research. I'm still not going to know it all. So I got to talk to people. And then,
Yeah.
I'm sure super well, you know, theory and practice, right? Academia is theory. We're in the practice.
Yeah.
So applying the things you're learning, seeing how that motto or that mindset works or goes in real life, is very different than reading it in a book.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Coach, what's on your rubric? I'm curious now. You showed me this rubric a couple of times. What's on your
yeah,
rubric next to you
I well,
about the
I've got
why?
two different things. I've sort of printed them out just to so one is sort of finding your why, and so the idea is in the middle of this is everything you're going to write in there, right? So that could be if you're religious, serving God, right?
Mm.
If you want to be, you're born to Tiger Woods, like I was born to be a pro golfer, born to
Right.
be whatever. So, but the idea is the North Star of all this is vision for yourself, goals, and habits. And there's just a series of questions or things you want to look at to have and achieve all these. And it's come from my 32 years of being in this space. I finally had time to write it down and
Yeah.
try to make it make sense. And now I'm applying it into my development rubric with students. So things like self-efficacy. You've got to believe in yourself. If I say, hey, can you do this? And what's that? Another cliche, right? If you think you can, or you think you can't,
Mm-hmm.
you're right.
You're right. Exactly.
I got it all. Kids get a kick out of me at some time. But you got to inventory your talents and abilities. You got to know your family values. You got to know where your family values extend to your personal values. You've got to have a mindset, whatever it is. And I'll tell you, my youngest student, who's I wouldn't take on a 10-year-old student unless the family asked, would you mind working with our younger child? And I said, sure, we'll see what he's going to get out of this. But it's working a little bit with him. And he came to my 2-day student development retreat, and which everyone leaves with practical set of philosophies and approaches to life, etc. So one of them obviously is mindset. And so it's cute. His mindset, you probably know this, the Sia song Unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go into the song myself.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
failed music. But his motto is almost unstoppable. He's like, Mr.
Mm.
Diffley, I'm 10. I weigh 87 pounds.
Right.
People can stop me anytime they want. But I'm going to try to be almost unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about his efforts in sports and arts and school, I'm like, well, are you living up to your motto, your mindset of almost unstoppable? He's like, no. Okay, well, then that's not who you are. So let's work on that to get you to that point, if that's what you want to be.
Right.
Uh, grit, resilience, mentors. Who do you follow? We talked about self-discipline. Oh, self-discipline. Oh my God.
Mm.
You can be motivated all day long, but take out the self-discipline. So, and self-discipline is something you can measure in a survey. Obviously, it's observable. When I coached, I stopped coaching youth sports a few years ago. The last team I had, I did all this work on, right? This assessment work. I had one student. It's the only kid so far of thousands I've studied whose self-discipline score or quality was number one.
Mm.
We played a 60-game hockey season at
Wow.
age 14.
Wow.
The kid had 0 penalties.
Mm.
He was the first out of the locker room every day. Never talked back to the coach. He was just locked down self-discipline. It was awesome. Most kids that age, that's the last trait they have. And some go to, junior boarding school where it's super disciplined.
Right.
You know, Choate was a place, as you know, you probably didn't think of it at the time, but there was a lot of freedom, there's a lot of latitude. So it took a high level of self-discipline and vision.
Yeah.
So I take the kids through this step, habits to break, habits to build upon, and then just you can have a vision statement for yourself at whatever age you want. Just a matter of understanding what it is, playing with words. Once you get all that stuff,
Yeah.
then you just look at it every few months and say, what a joke. I can't believe that was me 3 months ago. That was so silly. It's the value of having that in writing is extraordinary.
Mm.
It just is. We all know what we look like when we were little. We all know what we wrote like or how we behaved. And it seems comical to us. But if you don't have that image in a picture, like looking back at you as a kid, mental image, it's hard to see that.
Yeah.
So writing down mental attitudes, being able to kind of search for that and finding your why. You can, by the way, you can have 30 things in here.
Yeah.
And eventually one or two emerge, or maybe 30 things emerge for your whole life, and you're juggling with a bunch of side hustles.
Yeah.
But, and I ask my students these questions, when you got up today, what was on your mind?
Mm.
And if they have a why, it's easy. Everything else is easy.
Yeah.
Everything else follows. If you don't, yeah, maybe you're a smart, good kid and you're talented and you just go about doing what people told you to do.
Mm.
Sometimes all that works out great. But man, is it nice to have an advantage and a head start by doing these simple exercises that put you there. And I'll tell you right now, I'm a work in progress. My wife will back that up big time. I would love for someone to have a retreat for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to be up talking the whole time. I want to be listening. I want to be taking my own notes. So I just think this kind of rubric is key. And I don't know if mine's perfect, but it's based on a lot of stuff I've studied and observed over the years. So it's a starting place for me. And I've been using it for a few years now. It's funny, I haven't really changed it, so it must be decent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when parents get a hold of this document their kids filled out, they are like, wow. I wish I had these questions asked of me when I was a kid.
Mm.
And a lot of, if I made you think, you could come up, if you don't have these at the tip of your tongue right now, Sean, you would come up with them in, a matter of seconds of processing, thinking.
Right.
But super valuable to have them written down.
Yeah.
Really is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It reminds me a little bit about my book and how my books are structured in terms of just putting down things on paper and really seeing that and taking steps of greatness to be the best version of you. But it also just makes me see that, like you said, writing things down is key. And Coach, I think you have to write a book.
It's funny. One of my families right now, the mom has some connections to that industry, and she said, "I had no idea all this stuff existed that I could or should have been doing. You have to write a book." I said, I'm a book guy. I'm more of an audio, YouTuber.
Yeah.
But it's before I started RD3, Sean, I actually reached out to a few sort of wealthy Choate graduates saying, hey, I'd like to sort of start a public center, a community center for all the things we've talked about, I could talk about for hours. And it was a little overwhelming to me and to them. They're sort of like very nice response, but like, get in line,
Right.
You're the 10,000th person that's called to ask for a grant or something. And I was a one-man show, so I wasn't writing grants or anything. That honestly, I'm gonna like cheap out a little bit. I'm just gonna start my own thing, see how it goes. I would love to convert this someday to that. And it's sort of like it'd be like the whatever they call the boys club, boys girls club, with a program. And I'm sure they have programs now, but more like mine, to be honest, with no humility, I say. And there's programs like Prep for Prep and ABC and others that New Jersey Seeds. There's all kinds of programs, but those end up being pretty practical. Like, let's help you get to where you need to go.
Right.
Not as much philosophical or human developmental.
Right.
Because they're busy. I get it. Totally. It's not a criticism, just a reality.
Yeah.
So, my latest post, I think I said something about and it was Jim Valvano, the famous Villanova basketball coach, who said, every day we should spend time, we should laugh, we should be brought to tears, whether good or bad news, and we should spend some time in thought. I don't know if you meditate. I didn't pick up on that or not, but I don't. But I take walks around my office, looking at the pine trees, and
Yeah.
just and thinking. And what I do more importantly, I would say for the students, because great, you had great teachers, you had great advisors, but how many times could an advisor sit you down and look you in the eye and say, Sean, let's get a game plan here. Let's talk,
Mm.
right? That may have happened here or there a little bit, but the value of doing that is to me extraordinary. That
Yeah.
doesn't cost anything, right?
Yeah.
It's just hold on, time out. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's study you. Let's dig in deep to you and let's see who you are. And again, knowing you can change you're changing who you are from your 12 to your whole life. So it's
Hmm.
the process you're always going to go through. But at the end of the day, sort of what's on your tombstone, right? You want to know what you're leading with and what you're finishing with. And
Yeah.
that is the core of your character. That's who you're getting.
Yeah.
We admit a student and a family, you're getting that core kid. Influences, obviously, environmental influences can change. That kids can have bad days. Good kids can make bad decisions. But that's where the mentor comes in and the accountability and the game plan. Is that who you want to be, right? Does that behavior support your reputation, your
Hmm.
persona?
Hmm.
And I'll tell you the secret button, and I don't know if it's very secret, but to me it is, and maybe more so in boys, it's pride. You know, I
Hmm.
mean, pride. Who doesn't want to be kick ass? Who doesn't
Hmm.
want to be proud of being a great person? Who
Yeah.
doesn't have good things said about them? So, the pride button, I like to push on that at the right time in the right situation, as a good coach does
Yeah.
in that scenario.
Yeah.
So,
The good kind of pride. Yeah.
exactly.
The good kind of
Yeah,
pride.
yeah, yeah.
Listen, coach, if people want to get in contact with you, link up with you about enrolling their kids or even themselves in RD3 programs,
All right.
how can they go about doing that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, RD3education.com is my website. And I finally hired a few people to help me with some of the stuff I'm not good at. So I actually just changed the image about the journey of the mountaintop, etc. If you ask me, Sean, what's my number one favorite characteristic in a human being? And there's two categories. There's moral virtues and performance virtues. The performance virtue for me is initiative. It's action, taking action. So along those lines, I started a TikTok, RD3 Education, where I put some stuff up there. In part, I'm actually hoping for all the not the haters, but I'm just hoping for people to, like, poke some holes in my theories or
Hmm.
say, who's this guy? What does he know? What does he think? But it's actually gotten pretty good support. And then I have RD3 Education Advising Center YouTube, which I want to say I just started them. Actually, probably started them a year ago, but I don't pay much attention to them yet. I'm hoping to ramp it up, and I'm dying, like all of us. I'm dying for feedback. Like, what
Mm.
you thinking. And again, this is why there should be some forum that I should probably create myself for people to just exchange these parenting ideas, almost,
Yeah.
raising kids, forming there's a few t-shirts I want to create. And there's one theme I want to pick up on. One is, how to build a human being,
Mm.
like Build a Bear at the mall, probably out of
Uh-huh.
business 20
Uh-huh.
years ago.
Yep.
Like, how do you actually build a human being? What is that formula for building a human being? It just, no one gives you a playbook, etc. So my social media is there to kind of throw ideas and play with ideas, tell people what I think, and try to get some reaction to it. Um, because I have this, wealth of experience. Really, my gift is perspective.
Yeah.
I got the perspective by being, in the space I've been in for 32 years and being active in the community and kind of practitioner. So yeah, I would love any feedback. I do. I'm actually onboarding students for next year, filling up pretty quickly.
Mm.
I do a 2-day student retreat, which I think might be interesting to some of the listeners. People do come from sort of all around. It's just sort of a 12 to 16 students, 2 days. It's in Connecticut in August. I'll be actually calling the hotel to book that again for this year. Kind of a cool thing. That's the model where it'd be fun to do for adults,
Hmm.
even a 1 day kind of thing. And I'm sure these things exist. I just haven't found them yet, relative to character development. And character is a tricky word, right? It's again, it's good to think of this in two buckets. The who are you? We're human beings and we're human doings,
Hmm.
right? So how do you do
Hmm.
and how do you be, right?
Yeah.
These are the two essential questions.
Yeah.
And again, imagine being a 14-year-old kid and having answers to some of those questions because you just take some time to think about it.
Right.
Really the
Right.
really
Right.
the yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Coach, I really appreciate you. You've inspired me actually to try to find my parents and lock down these things I wrote down for me, 20 years ago and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But it does just bring about all the things we talked about, especially talking about character, talking about greatness, talking about the things that I think for you and I are very, very innate,
Yeah.
and for others they are not. And doesn't mean that you can't work on that. You can't build upon that. You need a rubric, you need a structure, you need a plan. You need to be able to look at a board like you have over there in the corner and find something that inspires you to be a little more today and
Right.
find your inner greatness. I truly agree with you being great, and we all could be great. And my last comment before we close out, I had a patient of mine who I was talking about being great,
Yeah.
and he's a Christian guy,
Yeah.
and he was like, "No one's great. Only God is great." And I was
Yeah.
like, I mean, yes, but God also wants us to be great and to do our greatness and to be as the best that we can every single day. So there are no limits on what we can do. We want to go out there and be the best that we can. There's nothing wrong with that. It shouldn't be seen as a bad thing, especially if we're all trying to do it together.
Yeah.
And I know even in one of your your quotes on your page, you have partnership is a new leadership. Coming together and doing this together is what we would want to do. So
Yeah.
I'm inspired by you, Coach. I appreciate all your wisdom today, and I wish you the best with all your endeavors with this. This is amazing.
Dr. Thomas, thank you. Admitting you to Cho was one of the best things I've ever done.
I
Keep paying
appreciate
it
it.
forward. Keep
Yes,
paying it
sir.
forward.
I gotta have you back on the show to talk more about the connection with young people and older adults. 'Cause I do think there are a number of people who can benefit from your programs,
Yeah.
and I think there are people who are looking for something just like this, but
Yeah.
probably don't know where to look for it.
Yeah.
So we can
Yeah.
talk more about that in the future for sure.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, Sean.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's how to raise a kid in today's educational climate too, where
Yeah.
there's things you can do that can make up for, and not everyone can attend a place like Choate. So that's part of my passion is helping those folks. And I have a number of families I work with that they're going to public school
Mm-hmm.
till the end, but they're doing this as a supplement, so
Mm.
it gives them some of the things they're missing. Um,
Awesome.
and then I have a ton of private school kids as well who are just maximizing and understanding the piece. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
thanks for all you do, and thanks for having me as a guest. I appreciate it, and keep in touch.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And folks, you learned so much from Coach today. He's a wealth of knowledge. Please go on the sites and follow him. I'll put his sites in the show notes as well. And continue to be more alive in 2025. Let's go out there and be great. Know you're great. Don't ever be shy of being great this year, this month, this week. And I will see you next time. As always, peace.